Good morning, afternoon and evening to our global audience today. Welcome to Device Authority's Tech Talk series. Today's session is a tech CEO talk focused on IoT and VR in the medical device and healthcare space. I'm delighted to welcome a panel of CEOs from Fundamental VR, Wyld Networks, InVMA and Device Authority. During the session, Richard, Alistair, John and Darren will introduce themselves and provide valuable advice for medical device manufacturers and healthcare service providers leveraging VR and IoT. We expect the session to last approximately 40 minutes. You'll be able to submit questions throughout the session and we'll answer these towards the end. If you experience any audio issues, please contact BrightTalk directly as we are unable to troubleshoot this. A recording of the Tech Talk will be made available on the BrightTalk channel shortly after it finishes. BrightTalk will also email you a link so you're able to watch it in your own time. Okay, I shall now hand over to our first speaker for today, Richard.
Thanks very much. Good morning and afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Richard Benson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Fundamental VR. Now, we're a company that works on the intersection between immersive experience and haptics to enable medical training and to improve patient outcomes. And our platform, Fundamental Surgery, and you can see a few images of it here, is what we call a multimodal, so multiple interface training platform that's accredited for its education content and delivers surgical training and, really importantly, data insight into performance and capability. There's a lot of hardware in the virtual reality space these days. We're hardware agnostic. We're purely software. So we work with any mainstream VR headset, whether it's PC-based or standalone. My background is as a technologist. I've always looked at the application of technology against business problems and against requirements within different markets, and the application of virtual reality into medical felt like a really natural progression for me. What we seek to deliver is a safe place where people can acquire and refine their skills, to give unique data insight, and really ultimately to create an acceleration in skills development, which is applicable to institutions and hospitals where they need to train and develop their staff and maintain that capability, but equally to the life sciences, med device, pharmaceutical industry, where training, education and knowledge around the use of device and pharma products is key. So that's a little introduction to me. In terms of the area that I've focused on, we had a kind of key area really, which was to think about what are the potential opportunities and challenges going forward, and what tips might we be able to offer. Now, I'm not going to try and predict the future because we all know that the world is in a state of flux right now. But what I do know is from working with a lot of med device and healthcare providers in education and in data insight, that everybody is seeing a rapid enforcement of a change within the way that they behave and the way that the market operates. The integration of digital has happened rapidly over the last 6 weeks or so, and will continue to accelerate over the next few months. I certainly believe we're entering, probably in the next 3 to 6 weeks, hopefully, a period of what we're calling the PreNew Normal, which probably will last 12 to 18 months and will be personified by containment, control, monitoring and de-densifying. So we're all going to be working in a different way, and that's going to have a big impact on the way that training works within healthcare, which is the area that I'm focused in. So I think the key themes that are going to come through from that are remote, being able to provide training, engagement, coaching, etc. within a remote environment, so people are very diversely spread. Multi-platform, so that you can access through mobile, web, VR, all of those things in the same environment, accessing the same great content. And then, of course, collaboration, learning together. This is going to be key. So bringing people together in one training environment. And you can see a kind of example of this here on this slide, where we have massive multi-users all within the same VR learning experience. Zoom and platforms such as BrightTalk are fantastic, but there's a limit when it comes to surgical and medical training, and that's where I think VR can have a massive impact. Looking forward, in terms of actionable areas where you can, I think, drive real enhancements to the key performance indicators of the business beyond this period of crisis as we start to go into this next phase of PreNew Normal. I think firstly, where education needs, they of course, they still remain. So we need to embrace that need, find ways to create better skills utilization, and find ways to help clear the backlog that's going to be around. Because unlike a restaurant that might shut for 6 weeks, that need goes away for that period. But with in the medical space, that need's just building up. So finding new ways to create mass education, mass coaching, have one teacher and multiple trainees or peers, I think is going to be a key part of the next period. Second one is around leveraging that opportunity. So looking at ways to really remove travel cost, remove time burden, make the training more precise, make the skills tracking more accurate. VR is a great area for this to really work, and can really help with intimacy and proximity and give people a real sense of presence even when they can't physically be there. And then the final area, I think, is about reducing risk. So as we embrace VR and think about that as part of that ways of solving this distancing issue and this period of pre-new normal and then into the new way of operating, there's a lot of challenges, as you take on new technology. So finding ways to reduce the risk by using proven platforms, looking for accreditation, looking for future-proof so that you don't invest in the wrong area, finding infrastructure that is open so that you don't close down potential future avenues is a key part of going forward. And I think that's where, if you look towards platforms such as the fundamental surgery one and others in the market, then you'll find a way to tap into that expertise in a way that you can accelerate through and really deliver that capability to your business need quickly. I think I'm probably out of time, so I'll leave it there for now.
Okay, thank you, Richard. I'm going to hand over to Alistair now. Alistair, you may have to come off mute.
I need to come off mute, my apologies. Good
Brilliant,
afternoon, everyone. My name's Alistair Williamson. I'm the CEO of Wyld Networks. Wyld Networks have developed a unique and patented wireless mesh technology that connects smartphones directly to smartphones and IoT devices in a peer-to-peer mesh network. Basically enabling a wide range of use cases in creating, in revenue generating, creating solutions, as well as improving operational efficiency in enterprises. And if I can give you an idea of some of the applications, I say the applications of our technology cover a large number of use cases. They range from content delivery and location-aware marketing in retail, stadiums, events, and venues, as well as integration of smartphones and IoT devices and peer-to-peer mesh networks for delivering operational efficiencies, particularly for enterprises in smart buildings, healthcare, and transportation. As well as that, we also look at delivering dedicated IoT solutions for terrestrial as well as satellite IoT networks. And I guess on a very current topic, we're also engaged in discussions on how technology can enhance the efficacy of COVID-19 proximity contact tracing applications by utilizing the underlying technology that Wyld Networks has. However, today, I wanted to focus on issues we actually hear from healthcare professionals, particularly on preventable waste time in hospitals and how the integration of IoT devices and smartphones can actually help reduce the problem by actually integrating clinician mobility, IoT asset tracking, and staff location management together as one holistic solution to basically address this preventable waste time that a lot of healthcare professionals are actually talking about, which is hampering their roles in doing their jobs. So our proposed solution basically looks at providing efficiency in 4 key areas that create that preventable waste time in hospitals. And that's throughput. And so, if we can create solutions to actually track patients from admission all the way through to discharge, we could reduce the average length of stay in hospitals by about 4 hours per person. Just to give you an idea of what that actually means, that would equate to increasing capacity of about 10 beds in an average hospital of 275 beds. So that's the part about how we use our technology to actually track patients from the moment they admitted into hospital to the moment they're discharged. And then there's asset tracking. Asset tracking is actually the second biggest contributing factor to preventable waste time. And it relates to searching for equipment, searching for ventilators, searching for hospital beds, searching for medical equipment. And it relates to about between 16 and 30% of daily wasted time. And what we're looking at doing is incorporating software solutions using IoT that would actually track those assets. And our studies have shown that by tracking those assets with IoT sensors and software solutions, you can actually reduce this wastage by up to 80%. The fourth area that we get feedback from healthcare professionals is on staff locating. It's also one of the top 5 contributing factors to preventable waste time. And it's all about getting the right staff in the right place at the right time. And, we've looked at solutions, and our solution of geofencing and staff finding tracing technologies could alleviate this problem by ensuring that we're directing the right staff to the right place at the right time to ensure they're actually delivering on the roles they're entitled to deliver on. Then the fourth piece is operational workflow. And the feedback we get is that dynamic workflow notifications will become a standard methodology of improving daily processes in hospitals. But the key issue here is, how do we make sure that all of those notifications are actually delivered to the right person in the right location and at the right time? So those were the 4 key issues we took from healthcare professionals, and we looked at how our solution can actually alleviate a lot of those problems. So we've taken our existing technology, and there's 3 products which actually create the solution, of integrating mobility, IoT asset tracking, and staff locating. So there's the Wyld Mesh piece, and Wyld Mesh, it's fairly self-evident in what it actually does, but it's actually a software agent that's embedded in a mobile application. And that mobile application could be an NHS application. And what it does, it actually creates a peer-to-peer mesh connectivity through the inherent inbuilt wireless capability of your smartphone of Bluetooth low energy, as well as peer-to-peer Wi-Fi and direct Wi-Fi. So what it actually does is it creates a mesh network of smartphones connected directly to smartphones and connected directly to IoT devices. So that's the mesh piece. Wyld Fusion is our content delivery and data analytics platform. And what it does, it actually delivers the content and its location-aware content to the end users on the mesh network. And you can see in the picture here, we've created a geozone around the hospital, so you can identify where all your staff are, you can message all your staff, and you can direct your staff to the right place on where they need to go to, and we can create a communication channel for the doctors and nurses to be able to communicate with each other. But it also does all the data analytics. So it collects data from the network, and in particular, it would collect data from IoT devices through the mesh network and then visualize that data. And when you visualize that data, you then get an understanding of where equipment is, whether sanitary devices need to be refilled, whether refuge bins need to be emptied. It will track all the location of all the equipment that you've actually connected IoT sensors to, such as ventilators, hospital beds, and it will also track patients as patients move through the hospital to try and sort of reduce this admission to discharge timeline. And then Wyld Connect is the third part, and that's a software stack that we've developed, and that software stack is integrated into IoT sensors. Those IoT sensors can be integrated with ventilators, medical equipment, beds, etc. And that software stack actually integrates through different protocols like Bluetooth, NB-IoT, LoRa, LoRaWAN, that integrates all of that equipment into the mesh technology, so you can actually manage and track all of those assets. So that's just a basic sort of understanding of one of the applications that we're working on in relation to IoT and healthcare. At that point, I'll pass over to the next presenter.
Thank you, Alistair. I will hand over to John.
Thanks, Rosa. Thanks, Alistair. Hello, everyone. My name's John Hill. I'm actually the COO of InVMA, but what's a letter between friends. Standing in here for Pat Nash, who's our CEO, unfortunately was taken ill yesterday. Basically, quickly, just an introduction to InVMA. InVMA stands for In-Vendor Managed Assets, and what we basically do is we connect the physical and digital worlds to transform industry. And we do this by using technology to help solve problems and driving change. Really, at the moment, we probably should turn that around the other way, where we're responding to change in the market with a lot of movement towards remote and predictive maintenance, which we're heavily involved in. The three uniques that we've got as a business overall is that we can do work end to end. So we're a system integrator who can work with you from end to end, from the hardware level through firmware through to the building of the application, normally on the platform ThingWorks. We've got many partners that enable us to do that, from many of the people on the call today, but also ARM, Dell, ECA, and our software partner PTC, their product ThingWorks. And the third unique is that we can provide speed because we've got our own AssetMinder product and framework, which is 80% product ready for OEMs that want to use that as an accelerator to get them started with their IoT application. And obviously, as we use the PTC stack, we're also able to use their augmented reality authoring tools to build connected augmented reality experiences. Our main customers therefore reflect that. I won't go into too much detail and bore you with the customers, but really want to highlight a couple. One is GCE Healthcare, who are at the moment working flat out building oxygen concentrators for the global market, using their Clarity connected platform for managing the support of that product, through to people like Centrax Gas Turbines, and indeed one customer on their MEMS, who are MEMS have got all of the generators that are in the Nightingale hospitals around England and in some of the other hospitals in Scotland and Wales in the United Kingdom. So basically, we've got a broad range of products that we've connected for our customers. So going on to answering the exam question, which is, what advice would we give? Well, real 3 points that struck myself and Pat when we were discussing, how to boil this down to in 6 minutes. And the first one is, be sure you know why you're doing it. Now, obviously, that's changing a lot, particularly in IoT currently, as the move to remote is being accelerated. But really, there's sort of three main areas that we see that you can start to get advantage. The first one, which is not on the slide actually, is protecting your employees and your team and your customers. But following from that, with IoT and AR, is creating product intelligence and visibility about your product. Is it about increasing revenue through product innovation, through adding value-added digital services around that? Or is it looking in the back end, how do we reduce costs by providing service, for example, with one visit rather than two? Can we do remote service, remote interrogation? Can we do things as well about simply automated ordering on consumables? So really it is understand identify and know why you're doing it. That's sort of step one of our advice. It sounds obvious, but we're amazed at the number of people who start with the technology and look for with a hammer looking for a nail. The second bit of advice really is to take those 3 points and start to consider how it can affect your whole business. This isn't just a technology journey. This is a transformation journey that's going on. And at the moment, we're seeing companies going through very accelerated transformation journeys and the impact that that's having on them. So we went from having companies that were really desperate to get things started with us to stopping it to later very desperate to start with us again. So basically, where are you going to have? So if we take the service optimization side, remote service is going to start to change the way that your product, if you are looking at that, is going to be telling you how it's doing and whether it needs some help or not. That's around remote and predictive service. That's going to change the way that you respond, how you deal with the customer, and how you manage that customer portfolio overall. So if you have immediately a contact center that's dealing with that, there's a lot of retraining and a lot of refocus of that remote field service work. So to be looking at and understanding what's happening in the field with your customer base and responding to that. On the customer side as well, in terms of service optimization, particularly with augmented reality, providing AR instructions and enabling you to present data actually over the machine or the product or device in context will significantly reduce the contact calls that you'll be getting to your support and help desk. So you'll be seeing reductions there, but also you'll start to have additional requirements around augmented reality authoring skills and how to present that. The next thing then is the field technician efficiency and being able for those engineers to remotely see the status of the equipment before they go out, or indeed that contact center change significantly how they manage. And indeed, if you integrate that with your field service engineers and their location, their skill sets, that starts to, as with one of our MEMS, starts to enable you to place and make sure you've got the right technician with the right parts going to the right place to go and fix that before they get there, and that reduces the wagons roll. But again, training impact around that. The other area then really is around product innovation. Now clearly when you start talking about connected revenue models, so for example with Centrax gas turbines starting to move to a power by the hour kind of approach, and rental models that are driven by sort of customer usage patterns, etc., then that sort of changes the behaviour of your customer and changes the way that your sales team have to sell, and also the way that they're going about that. So there's some training required there. But then also, even within your engineering team, getting data from the actual products themselves in the field, how they're being used, will give you insight into how you can improve your product. So all of this data is only of value if you take action on the back of it, and that's one of our key bits of advice, is really think about, okay, great, we've got the data, but who is it's got to take the action? Have they got the skills? Have they got the will? And have they got the opportunity to capture that value for you as a business? The final one I really wanted to talk about is the focus on the capabilities actually that make you special. So as you're looking at your product and your market and where you are in the market, these are the things that you need to consider as you start to look for your IoT or AR, VR. And that's basically from the software layer to the hardware, firmware on the device itself, how it communicates, security that's required, and also some legal aspects, particularly around data ownership and analytics on that, and visual ownership, and overall the capabilities. And if I just briefly take one example of GCE, they started the journey where they decided that they were going to use originally all outsourced capabilities. So they used COCOM for their hardware design and firmware design on the communication elements of the hardware that they're going to be putting into the products to make them connected. They relied on device authority for advising around security with InVMA. On the COM side, they used Stream IoT, which has now obviously been bought by ARM. So using ARM, they decided to outsource all of the hosting and failover with Azure, which was very useful for them because of the data ownership and data sovereignty issues that they had with the medical device, enabling them to choose the country from where they could host and store the medical-related data. And then they used PTC for the ThingWorx platform, so they didn't have to build an application from scratch. And obviously, as InVMA, we provide the system integration services. But as their journey increased, they realised that they wanted to own and bring in-house all the firmware and hardware design, and brought that in-house quite quickly, because they started to realise that by commoditizing around one particular chipset and hardware design across their product portfolio, that was a key area of value for them, and they decided to focus on that, whereas everything else they've kept as it was, continuing to support. So simply, the key messages that I wanted to give was, be sure you know why, recognise it can affect your whole business, and really understand what the impacts that's going to have on people and process, traditional sort of good project management, and really focus on what makes you special, and use the expertise and also all the pre-built stuff that is available in the marketplace that enables you to get a fast and secure start to the project. So without further ado, I'll hand over to the next presenter.
Thank you, John. I shall now hand over to Darren.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you, John. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending today. And I'm Darren Ansell, the CEO of Device Authority. It's good to, you've already mentioned our name before, John, so thank you for that recognition in one of the use case examples. So before we get to the Q&A, just a quick, I guess, a bit of background and a few threads from me, and then I'll directly answer the question that we were asked. I think at a headline level, if data security is important and protecting IP, but really more importantly, patient safety or critical patient safety, that's really when we get pulled in to help with systems integrators or device manufacturers in solving problems specifically in the Internet and medical things space. I think we have a phrase internally we use a lot. I think at the end of the day, if you can't trust the device, you can't trust the data. And it's a very coupled conversation. And when we work with people, it is all about solving the trust around the device and the data. So moving forward, if I just bring up, I guess, key things that people talk to us about in the context of business challenges that medical leaders or product managers, security architects think about in the design phase or building of the products. And they range across a number of areas. I mean, I touched on patient safety and confidentiality, clearly very important, especially when you've got compliance and regulatory requirements that companies have to adhere to, HIPAA being specifically an area in the medical space, GDPR being a big area in focusing around the data security space. But, any sort of theft or disruption to services, I mean, clearly could be quite detrimental, not only to necessarily patients, but purely to the brand reputation or the reputation of any company. And I guess, in current situations, we touched on really the difficult situation that the world finds itself in. This is only going to get worse if medical becomes more mobile and more clients and more security is going to be required to avoid, any potential financial liability and ransomware. So those are some of the challenges. And it's well versed and well written from analysts, from the medical press, and I'm sure many of the people on this call have heard about the bedside patient monitoring cases, have heard about the insulin pump. But, just imagine an example. I mean, we deal with a customer, a medical robot. But imagine a medical robot example that effectively runs offline and carries out the wrong operation because it's received the wrong data load, carries out the wrong operation on the wrong person. I mean, just imagine the implications of that, not just for the person, but in terms of any company in such a situation. So having that device trust and having that data trust around the operation itself, and then having the ability to review that information in a secure manner is very important. And again, these are just some examples of where there's been vulnerabilities in the past. So when we talk to people, and it's interesting, and I think John drew this slide in his presentation, but this is us looking through our lens. When people talk about security, I think you have to think about it in a number of contexts. And sometimes we're talking to people who are building devices. and they've spoken to people through their supply chain that could be chip manufacturers or even board manufacturers. John gave you a good example of that. But my advice is to think about the device. How many devices or device types would you have in your organization, or effectively you sell through your markets into the respective medical markets? But what choices do you make about securing the device? And it isn't just about securing the device, but it's about how you make sure that device is then trusted into the center ring here on this diagram by the application. Now, your application could be homegrown, it could be based on Azure, as we heard before, or AWS, or you pick a best of breed like PTC ThingWorks or Software AG. It doesn't matter. But having the right security platform integrated with that platform, whether it's in the cloud or on-premise, again, it doesn't matter. You have the choice. But making sure you can trust the devices that interact with those applications, and making sure you can trust the data that you both consume from those devices, but also send down to those devices at the edge. And then the final point, and I think, this has hit us home, and we've learned, and we're applying this into the development of our own product, Keyscaler. But many organizations in the early stages, and I would urge you now to think about, is really how do your customers integrate their new technology into the enterprise? Or indeed, how would you, as a service provider or even as a device manufacturer, how do you integrate back into the enterprise? And I think it's very important that that's factored in your thinking, because interoperability, but as well as being guided by existing security policies and working with investment decisions already made, is a key requirement in a forward-looking world. So, I would urge you to really think about it in three contexts. What about enterprise integration, what that means? What about the data center and where the application lives and how we interact? And what about on the device side, or the supply components to the devices? And all of those need to be solved. One isn't good enough. And then finally, if you look at that across a spectrum, it's, well, how do I then ensure I'm compliant, and how do I manage it at scale? So thinking of those things, is very important. So 5 takeaways from me before we get into the Q&A is, think about designing security in right up front. We've spoken with some people who have done that. We've spoken with some people who it's an afterthought. And what I would say is, where it is an afterthought, which really goes to my third point, and we have to be realistic. Things change. The security landscape will change. It's fundamentally important that you think about it and work with people that can not only help you build security into your device in your planning cycle, but can also help you with over-the-air updates and solve deployed solutions. So working with people that can deal with greenfield and brownfield deployments, so retrofitting to existing deployments, is very important. Not enough people think about that, and I think very important that people do. Then really you have the best of the solutions to deal with both current and new. And I touched on before about a unified approach, and I think that is important. You can't just think about the device. Clearly that's important. Being able to attest the identity and integrity of that device is critical, but also about the data. Making sure the right clinician, doctor, nurse receives the right information around the right patient, just purely because of data security issues and duty of care. So those things are important, and it is a very coupled conversation. And then having the ability to effectively manage that at scale, because no one's doing this for 5 devices or 10 devices. I've spoken to some people who are looking to deploy, between 5 and 10,000 incremental devices every year. So in 5 years' time, and maybe now with the COVID-19 epidemic we're dealing with, there's going to be an even bigger push for remote monitoring, mobile medicine, mobile treatment, keep people out of hospitals. So devices and data being managed remotely through cloud, on-premise, it is going to be even more important. So having the ability to effectively, again, to manage those devices and make sure things are secure end-to-end is going to become very important. So and again, I've heard people talk about, well, I'm going to build it myself. It might take 2 or 3 years, but we're going to build it ourselves. And I think that's legacy thinking. Whereas some people, again, I've heard them say, we're making the decision around the Azure platform. It's got a number of tools and toolkits, but it doesn't provide all the security elements that we need to provide it for the medical space. How can you help us? We've looked at what is available. It takes too long to do it ourselves. Can you help us expedite things in months rather than years? And obviously software solutions allow that if implemented correctly. So I think time to market and how much resource you're willing to attribute to things is a very important factor. So, think before you build, think about buying would be my final point. So, Rosa, that's me done. Some takeaways from me, and thank you to the other speakers, and we'll open it up to Q&A, and I think you've got some questions already, so I'll back to you.
I do. Thank you, Darren, and also John, Alistair, and Richard. The audience, we do actually have a couple minutes left, so if you haven't submitted your question already, now is your chance. I have some questions I've already received. This one I'm going to say is a bit of an open question, so all chip in as you see fit. Do any of the speakers see tagging technology being used to help track the immediate challenge of tracking COVID-19 tested patients, positive or negative?
I guess I should answer that. But did you say tagging?
Tagging technology is the terminology that's been used.
Tracking, I suspect. So
possibly.
Yeah. Can you just repeat the question again, and I'll try and get the right answer, please?
Sure. It's just, do you see it being used in the current state for the challenges of tracking COVID-19 tested? I guess it's tracking tested patients. Can it be used, or what can be used?
No, absolutely. I think there is. I truly believe that moving forward, we'll be looking at technologies such as digital vaccine certifications that will be embedded in mobile phones that will indicate whether you have received the vaccine or not received the vaccine, or being tested for antibodies from a positive or negative perspective, and then utilizing that technology to enable us to work smarter, not just in healthcare facilities, but also in businesses, to ensure that social distancing prevails. So yes, I do see it being taken up quite predominantly moving forward, and not just currently today, but through the future.
Okay, great, thank you. And I've got a question, I think this one's for John. John, does InvMA bring all the capabilities you mentioned together, or how would it work if we needed help starting an IoT project?
So we bring those capabilities together. Obviously, we don't make hardware, so we would bring that in, and obviously we haven't got the networks. But in terms of the skills and capabilities to bring it together, the short answer is yes. Where we would start, it depends where you as an individual are on your journey. If it's really what's the strategic intent, and answering that first question that I had of why are we doing this, then we can help with some alignment workshops around that to get people aligned onto what it is they're trying to solve and what the market opportunity is, through to detailed design sessions on how we would configure and how you'd put that particular product together, including the likes of what Darren was talking about with security review and security posture, right the way through to this is the outline of what we want. We want to go and configure and crack on and project manage that, and then we can help there. We can also get people started in the market really quickly by using the asset-minded product that we have to get to the 80% solution that we find most people want with a connected product, to get that very quickly, and then that enables them to get immediate user feedback and start to pivot and do sprints that are aimed at adding the extra bits of value that they want. So short answer, yes, with our friends.
Brilliant, thanks, John. Richard, a question for you. Do you see virtual reality helping with compliance in hospitals?
Yeah, good question. I think it can, yeah. I think where it's got great application is in a controlled way of looking at how people behave, the actions they take and the interactions that they have, and therefore using it to check compliance, whether that's in the administration of care of patients, or whether that's the use of equipment, I think can be incredibly valuable. We've certainly seen that with some of our medical device customers, where it can start to give really good data insight on a remote basis around how and when actions are taken and therefore where compliance sits.
Okay, great. Thanks, Richard. Darren, I've got a question for you, which I think you did touch upon. Can you help with security for legacy devices already deployed in hospitals?
The short answer is yes. We need to understand the requirements of the devices and the products, but we have existing conversations with people about that. So the short answer is yes. So just reach out to us and we'll work out how we can help.
Great, thanks. Alistair, there's a question just about whether the 3 products, is it Mesh, Fusion and Connect, do they integrate together and can they be used with medical devices in hospitals? And then coupled to that also, how are they consumed? Are they used through the cloud?
So the first question is that yes, they can be integrated together to create solutions to track devices in hospitals, staff in hospitals, and create communication networks. So all 3 of those products are integrated to create one solution in the use case I was talking about today. However, we do have customers that procure Wyld Connect on its own, and particularly in the satellite IoT space. So they can be marketed as different solutions, but in the use case today, it's integrated. Wyld Fusion resides in the cloud, and that's how you get access to the content delivery and data analytics platform. Wyld Mesh is a software agent that you would integrate into an application that's on your mobile phone, whether that's a Waitrose loyalty application or an NHS application. And Wyld Connect is a software stack that you would download and integrate into your sensor to create that wireless connectivity.
Great, thank you. I've just had another question come in for John specifically. Does InVMA include remote monitoring and remote maintenance for Industry 4.0?
So yeah, to take that question in 2 parts. So yes, remote monitoring, absolutely. So we've got 2 markets, connected product market, and also people who have multiple assets and connecting to those. So yes, and we use a mixture of classic sort of machine monitoring algorithms to do that, upper and lower control limits, alerts, alarms, etc. And more importantly, we're starting to get into self-learning applications where we learn what the product itself is, what normal looks like for a product, its normal usage, etc. Start to highlight when it's going outside of that, and we use things like vibration, things like fast Fourier transforms. For oil, we look at different types of densities, etc., and particulates in oil. So that we've got a plethora of different sensors and sensor technologies that we pull through the AssetMinder product to enable to do that. In terms then of the second part of the question, which is remote maintenance software, what we generally find is that most companies have got, most people that maintain their assets have got some form of CAFM, computer-aided facilities management software, or, and so what we do is we normally just integrate directly to that and provide. So instead of the customer or the person on the line or the health professional raising the ticket in the maintenance log, it's the asset itself that raises the ticket. I find that's the most useful way of doing that.
Thanks, John. Richard, I've got another question for you, and I guess it's a bit aspirational, but can fundamental VR training be used in any other industries or applications other than medical surgery?
Yeah, we are very focused on the medical space at the moment, but I think in our core stack and technology that we've been building, the short answer is yes. I think if you think about other industries where there's either danger, risk, it's expensive, or there needs to be lots of repetition in the education and the training, I think that's where there's a natural jump across, particularly in the area of haptics. So, let's think of a quick example. If you think about deep sea exploration and how you train someone to deal with perhaps the the welding of a particular joint, at a very deep location, that could be incredibly hard to deal with, and the touch and sensor connected to that is really important. Well, that's where our technology could easily port across into that area in the future, and certainly it's something that we would be once we've got to the natural pause point on the medical side, it's one where we'd certainly be looking at licensing potentially of the technology.
Great, thank you, Richard. That now concludes the Q&A session. Any unanswered questions will be followed up over the next couple of days. I'd just like to say a big thank you to our speakers and also our audience. And if you have any further questions, please contact us. Otherwise, thank you and goodbye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rose, and thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks very much.